Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Atheist Experience. This show is brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin. I'm the host, Jeff D. The guest co-host today is Russell Glasser, Martin being in for medical experimentation today, and our guest is Virginia Glasser. Some horrifying events have overtaken our country in the past week since our last show, and we want to go straight to that rather than doing our normal introductory nonsense. The Atheist Community of Austin sponsored a gathering at Republic Park this morning. This was a non-sectarian, non-religious gathering to commemorate the victims of the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center on Tuesday, in contrast to the many and varied religious remembrances that have taken place around our nation. Each of us here on the show today was at that ceremony, and we all delivered addresses to the crowd of roughly 40 non-believers from around Austin and surrounding areas. We had visitors from San Antonio as well. And we want to repeat those addresses for you here on our show today. Russell, would you like to start?
Sure. I was moved to give this short speech because somebody asked me on one of the message boards that I'm on, what does an atheist say to someone who has lost a loved one or someone who is dying to comfort them? And it's a fair question because obviously we don't believe in an afterlife. We don't believe that somebody is going to live for all eternity. And the fact that we don't believe that is certainly not because we don't want to, because I think we can all agree here that if there was any real evidence or reason to believe that, then we'd all jump at the chance to live forever, or reunite with our families, or just think that they were looking down at us and appreciating what we were doing for them. But we don't. And that question particularly hit home for me because up until about 3 years ago, I had never had to deal with any death that affected me personally other than pets. And in just a few years, both of my grandfathers died, my great-grandmother, and one of my favorite authors, Douglas Adams. And now this, of course, even though I didn't know anyone personally at the World Trade Center. And I got to thinking that as an atheist, even though I don't believe that these people are in an afterlife right now, I think that the measure of their lives is basically centered around the way that they lived it, the way that we remember them, and the way that they affect the lives of us and those around them. So the way that I've dealt with loss personally in my life is to, in some cases, write little memorials for them saying what I remember about them, to talk with other people who knew and loved them, and just to take some time to reflect and sit and think to myself how they changed my life and how the world would have been different without them. And I think that's why many of us continue to sit and watch the news and listen to as many personal stories as we can find, because even though we didn't know these people, the more we hold them in our memories, the more it seems that their lives and their deaths were extremely important. And remember, we don't believe that they've gone to a heaven, which is a shame, but we also don't believe that any of them have gone to hell, which is a good thing. The last thing that I really want to say is that it's important to reach out to the people and to reach out to people that you know who are still alive and let them know before it's too late that their life has meaning for you.
Thank you, Russell. Virginia?
Sure. Basically, my thoughts on this whole disaster that's happened, I think have been like most other people's, regardless of how I feel philosophically. I do feel a great sense of loss, and I grieve greatly for all those people who have lost loved ones or don't know where their loved ones are. And in some sense, I'd have to say, aside from the immediate families and folks who are really feeling the loss firsthand or secondhand or even thirdhand, I think that I would probably feel this loss, I dare to say, more acutely than a lot of people, just for the sheer fact that I don't believe in an afterlife, and to me this is final, and death is finality, and it's a very tragic thing to all of a sudden just be wiped out of existence for no reason. And so one of the things that I have done to deal with it is I have donated some money to the Red Cross, and it's a small thing for me to be able to do, but it's something. And I listen to all the stories that I can possibly listen to that come on the news about these families, what they're going through. I cry right along with them, and in some small way, even though I can't be there physically, at least on an emotional level, I can grieve with these people. And that brings me better understanding, I think, of some of the pain they might be feeling. And it's also a good thing to be able to grieve and get it out of my system and learn how to go on with life. And hopefully some of those people will be able to do the same thing, have their time of grief and then go on with things, yet not forget, but definitely learn something from it. And that's how I deal with it. And it'll probably take a long time before everything will feel good again. So it's just a confusing time.
Yeah.
Lots of thoughts and lots of things swirling around in the head right now.
The word that I keep hearing over and over again in connection with Tuesday's attacks is the word senseless. And that pretty much sums it up. These terrorist attacks didn't make any sense. They were deeply irrational and displayed no grasp of reality whatsoever. We can sit here and imagine what the perpetrators might have hoped to accomplish as they plotted in darkened rooms halfway around the world from us. They may have hoped for the collapse of our economy, our demoralization, or our retreat from involvement in the Middle East. But as we sit here in the light of day in America and around the world, we cannot imagine how anybody with a speck of sense could have thought that this kind of terrorist attack would accomplish those goals. It hasn't worked, of course. Senseless acts seldom do. It has only served to rouse the world's anger and to instill civilized nations with a great resolve to root out the people responsible and bring them to justice. Right now we're trying to find out exactly who that is. Some people think it's taking too long, that when evidence began to point at Osama bin Laden in his Afghanistan hideout, we should have stormed over there instantly and slaughtered everyone in sight. But that early evidence could have been wrong. Bin Laden could have fled elsewhere. An attack before we know what's really going on would also be senseless, because it would not accomplish our goal. Some say that attacking won't work even after we've located the actual perpetrators. And I'm just glad to see that kind of discussion is taking place, because whatever our response is, we don't want it to be senseless. Senselessness is the one enemy behind these terrorist attacks that we have positively identified and that is still on the loose. We don't have to wait for any investigations to be concluded before we can declare war on it. We don't have to join the military to fight it. I can tell you for a fact that senselessness is not only hiding in the mountains of Afghanistan. Senselessness is the human propensity to believe things that are simply not worthy of belief. It is a tool that unscrupulous manipulators use to take advantage of our hopes and our fears. Somebody used it to convince those terrorist pilots to sacrifice their lives. And there are those who use it right here in America. You can see it at work in the words of Jerry Falwell, who just told his flock that these attacks are America's fault for not being fundamentalist enough for his God. You can see it, most Christians don't say that, of course. Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson say that, and I want to make that clear. You can see it in other suicide cults like Heaven's Gate, whose leader convinced his followers that a simple comet was really an alien spacecraft come to liberate those few who were brave enough to drink the cyanide. You can hear it in the voices of those calling for intolerance against Arab Americans living in the United States. You can see it at work in ads for TV psychics who suck the financial veins of anyone foolish enough to believe that they're able to see the future in tarot cards or speak to your dead relatives. And you can hear it in the words of Osama bin Laden, who tells his followers that to murder for Allah is to become a hero. Most Muslims don't say that. Osama bin Laden and a handful of other extremists say that. We are in a war against senselessness. We can fight this war by refusing to be tricked by hucksters and charlatans. We can fight it by speaking out whenever we hear them weaving their webs of deceit. We can fight it by questioning the ideas we're offered and actually caring enough about the truth to make sure a claim is true before we consent to believe it. Ask Jerry Falwell to prove not only that his God exists, but that he is God's legitimate spokesperson. Osama bin Laden claims exactly the same thing. Get a second opinion from qualified scientists before you agree that a comet is really a spaceship. Stop and ask yourself if the terrorists' race was really responsible for their attack before you throw a brick through an Arab-owned store window. Demand to know why nobody who claims to have psychic powers warned us before Tuesday's attack became a reality. And if anybody comes to you and says, shoot that abortion doctor, beat up that homosexual, fly that plane into a building full of civilians, God's love, but in this case he's making an exception for you, laugh right in that person's face and then warn your children, your friends, and your neighbors about them. Of course, I'm picking obvious examples because I don't want to lose any of you by questioning something you already believe. But senselessness is a tool used by manipulators to bend you to their will, and they'll keep trying until they come up with a senseless claim so desirable, or so beautiful, or so frightening that you'll think you just have to believe it. And you'd better re-examine the beliefs you currently cherish, because it's possible that they've already got you. This won't be over when we capture Osama bin Laden, because terrorism existed without him and can continue to exist without him. It won't be over even when every nation on Earth agrees not to harbor terrorists, because terrorists like the Unabomber can operate right here in America, where we don't tolerate terrorism for a second. But we do turn a deaf ear to the most outrageous lies and nonsense. I once sat in a public restaurant and overheard a man in the next booth carefully explaining to his companion why Jesus wanted everyone in America to own a gun. I cringed, but I said nothing. I will never allow something like that to pass unchallenged in my earshot again. That is how senselessness, hate, and terrorism can survive in our very midst. Terrorism won't stop, it won't hardly slow down until senselessness is made so shameful and embarrassing that nobody will be able to say such things without challenge. It won't be over until we drive irrationality and senselessness itself into hiding. Not by denying the right of free speech to people like Falwell, or the Unabomber, or even Osama bin Laden, but by using our own right of freedom of speech to expose and ridicule the senselessness of their claims.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, guys.
Well said.
Let's get back to the show now. We are live December 16, 2001. The Atheist Community of Austin is a non-profit educational organization, providing positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday morning at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop at 307 West 5th Street at 10:30 a.m., except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m. in the Longhorn Room of Fur's Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. The next lecture will be on October 7. ACA board meetings take place at noon right before, at 10 right before our regular meeting on the second Sunday of each month. The Godless Gamers is a spin-off group of the Atheist Community of Austin. It's a social gathering to play games and chat and just relax. They meet every Monday night at 6 p.m. for a potluck dinner at the home of Wendy Britton. The actual game playing starts at 7. ACA Happy Hour takes place at Trudy's near 183 in Burnett every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. outside on the patio if the weather permits. If you get there and don't see anybody else from the group, hang around. Lots of other people trickle in as the night goes on. The Glasser family, who are represented here up on the screen today, hosts a movie night at their home every other Thursday. The next movie night will be on September 20, and the film will be a comedy to be selected at that time. For more information, you can call our voicemail at 371-2911 or visit our website at www.atheist-community.org. And now on to news, which of course there's the obvious.
Yeah, it was not a slow news week, and most people have probably heard the biggest news, so I thought I'd take some of the most recent news to read today, which doesn't relate to atheism, but for those of you who haven't heard, Dateline Islamabad, Pakistan. The Pakistani government, led by President General Pervez Musharraf, will ask the Taliban, Afghanistan's rulers, to hand over suspected terrorist Osama bin Laden in 3 days or face massive military action led by the United States. CNN just learned that today. In a move called very encouraging by a senior Bush administration official Sunday, a high-level Pakistani delegation is traveling to Afghanistan Monday to carry this message to the Taliban Supreme Leader Mullah Muhammad Omar in Kandahar. And in New York, Afghan ambassador to the UN, Ravan Farhadi, who represents the Northern Alliance, the anti-Taliban movement in Afghanistan, said Sunday the Northern Alliance will make 15,000 troops available for any attack against Taliban-held Afghanistan. Musharraf and President Bush Saturday night focused on the possibility of Pakistani cooperation. We are not in any way expecting the Taliban response to be positive, the administration official said, but it shows the degree to which Pakistan has decided to step up and publicly try to help us here. Elsewhere, in Tajikistan, the foreign minister told CNN it denies reports that it would allow U.S. troops to take up positions in Tajikistan for possible military strikes on terrorist bases in neighboring Afghanistan. Next, we have a piece of news that Jeff alluded to in his in the address that he just presented. Television evangelists Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, two of the most prominent voices of the religious right, said liberal civil liberties groups, feminists, homosexuals, and abortion rights supporters bear partial responsibility for Tuesday's terrorist attacks because their actions have turned God's anger against America. God continues to lift the curtain and allow the enemies of America to give us probably what we deserve, said Falwell. Appearing yesterday, which I guess was like Thursday, I think, on the Christian Broadcasting Network's 700 Club, hosted by Robertson. Jerry, that's my feeling, Robertson responded. I think we've just seen the antechamber to terror. We haven't even begun to see what they can do to the major population. Falwell said the American Civil Liberties Union has got to take a lot of blame for this, again winning Robertson's agreements. Well, yes. Falwell then added, I really believe that the pagans, the abortionists, and the feminists, the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who have tried to secularize America, present company included, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen. A White House official called the remarks inappropriate.
He's just an
Needless to say.
And added, the president does not share those views. Falwell was unrepentant, saying in an interview that he was making a theological statement, not a legal statement.
It still makes no sense whatsoever.
Right. I put all the blame legally and morally on the actions of the terrorist, he said. But, he said...
Except for the blame he's putting on everybody he doesn't like in the United States that isn't fundamentalist enough for him.
Right. But, he said, America's secular and anti-Christian environment left us open to our Lord's decision not to protect. When a nation deserts God and expels God from the culture, the result is not good. Robertson was not available for comment, a spokeswoman said, but she released a statement echoing the remarks he made on his show. An ACLU spokeswoman said the group will not dignify the Falwell-Robertson remarks with a comment.
Unbelievable.
And finally,
unbelievable.
This isn't news.
That's low even for them.
Yeah, well... this isn't really news, but it's been kind of in the public eye lately. An alleged prediction by the prophet Nostradamus began to circulate around the internet even before the dust had settled in New York. Many people received an email containing the following prediction. In the city of God there will be a great thunder, two brothers torn apart by chaos, while the fortress endures. The great leader will succumb. The third big war will begin when the big city is burning. Nostradamus did not write the quatrain now being attributed to him. First of all, the quote is dated in 1654. Nostradamus died in 1566. In any case, the so-called prophecy originated with a student at Brock University in Canada in the 1990s, appearing on a web-page essay about Nostradamus. That particular quatrain was offered by the page's author, Neil Marshall, as a fabricated example to illustrate how easily an important-sounding prophecy can be crafted through the use of abstract imagery. He pointed out how the terms he used were so deliberately vague that they could be interpreted to fit any number of cataclysmic events. It appears someone mistook Marshall's illustrative example for an actual Nostradamus prophecy, and not content to leave well enough alone, added the part about the third big war will begin when the city is burning. A fabrication was thus further fabricated. Since then, more fakery has been piled on in later versions, which now conclude with the following. On the 11th day of the 9th month, two metal birds will crash into two tall statues in the new city, and the world will end soon after. Here's an alternative version of the prediction. In the year of the new century and 9 months, from the sky will come a great king of terror. The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches the great new city. In the city of York, there will be a great collapse. Two twin towers torn apart by chaos. While the fortress falls, the great leader will succumb. Third big war will begin when the big city is burning. This prophecy is bogus. The second quatrain is completely made up, and the first quatrain is composed of lines taken from two completely different prophecies of Nostradamus, which were linked together for effect. Lines referencing Normans and Mongols, which have no plausible application to current events, have been excised by whoever put these two pieces together.
So there they come, out of the woodwork to take advantage of everybody's shock in order to get them to believe that there's supernatural stuff going on.
Well, at least they can get us laughing after... I mean, there hasn't been much else to
those
see
of us who
humor
have the
in
background on that can laugh. There are other people that may well be actually taken in by this trickery.
I know for a fact that people are taken in by it. Someone I know, have known for quite some time, pointed an email out to me that was very similar to the one Russell just read, although this one was supposedly written by Socrates.
Socrates?
Yes.
But Socrates did not write predictions.
Yeah, I know, and you know that. But this person really bought into it and was just amazed by this prediction and was trying to propagate that further by sharing it with me. And I just looked at her like, you've got to be kidding me.
And this was at work.
This was at work, yes. And actually, because I wanted to be skeptical about it and question it, she got irritated with me because I just would not immediately buy into it.
Well, you know, people who want you to believe nonsense often do behave that way. I'm not quite sure why. I have no idea what the psychology behind it is. This is a live call-in show. That's our phone number up on the screen, 477-2288. That's odd. Has that always been our number here?
Yes.
Okay. And we will take your calls. Let me do a last couple of announcements here. The American Red Cross is accepting blood and financial donations to help cope with the recent terrorist attacks. To make a donation, you can call 1-800-HELP-NOW. If you want to donate blood, you can call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE. For more information, their website is www.redcross.org. The Third International Rationalist Conference will be in New Delhi, India on February 8 to 12, 2002. All correspondence to the Third International Rationalist Conference should be addressed to conference@rationalistinternational.net. For more information, visit www.rationalistinternational.net. The annual Austin AIDS Walk will be held on October 14, beginning at Waterloo Park at 1 o'clock p.m. The Atheist Community of Austin has signed up as a team, as we have for the last few years. We had great turnouts and raised several $100s during each of the last two walks. If you'd like to walk with us, you can sign up by going to the website www.aidswalkaustin.org and registering. The team name is Atheist Community of Austin. If you want to sponsor us but not walk, there is also a place you can do that. Michelle, who is one of the co-chairs of our group, will have sponsor sheets available at the weekly ACA meetings if anyone wants to get them from her there. And let's take some calls. Hello, Joe.
Yeah, I have a question.
Hi, Joe.
How you doing?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Do you think it was a bad idea for the or senseless for the nation to pray on Friday?
I don't think it did any good other than making the people doing the praying happier, which is not a terrible thing.
Right. So you would not object to people praying and the president asking the nation to pray?
We object to the president asking the nation to pray because that's a direct violation of the Constitution. It's really not his business.
Okay, so then
people who want to pray will pray anyway.
You got to keep in mind that at least 20% of the American public is not Christian. You know, and for the president to issue a request that alienates 1 out of 5 Americans is really very counterproductive in times like this.
Yeah, I would think that the majority of the American people would probably disagree with you and think that it wasn't.
Well, of course, 4 out of 5.
Yeah, so I don't understand why we prohibit our children from praying in school under that.
We don't prohibit our children.
We do not prohibit our children from
school.
Right.
What we prohibit is authority figures telling our children that they have to pray in school. There's a big difference there.
Right. What about the football players wanting to pray as a team?
Those football players were free to pray if they wanted to. They were not free.
The question there was the use of the loudspeaker equipment at an official state-run school event to broadcast prayers to the audience made up of mixed individuals, not all of which were interested.
Right. So
that was the issue there.
So hopefully the people listening realize that if your kid's on a football team wants to get together with about 10 other kids and pray while the spectators are watching.
Nobody cares what individuals do on their individual time. The problem is when the government takes a position on what is the right type of view to take on religion. It's really not the government's business.
Okay, I'd like to go to my next thing I wanted to point out is that the show is, I've heard you say in the past, that the show is to let other non-believers know that you guys are out there.
And to help educate people who are not familiar with atheism and what it is, give them a chance to actually hear what atheists really have to say, and not just hear about us secondhand from people who have objections to us.
Well, this seems to contradict the reasons and logical thinking that atheists use to prove and confirm their beliefs.
How's that?
Well, that is that the show is actually to push and promote your own religious beliefs that are not scientifically proven.
Didn't we just say that we're not here to do that?
Well,
didn't you just say that we have announced we are not here to turn people into atheists? That is not our concern.
Well, then what logical reason do you have that you would want people to know that you're out there? I mean, if they're
there are people who are already atheists that are isolated. When we had our gathering in the park today to mourn the deaths of those innocent civilians who died in Tuesday's terrorist attacks, we had many visitors from around town who saw the announcement about the gathering in the paper and came there and said to us, I didn't know there were other atheists around. I am living, one woman said to me, I feel like I am in hiding all day long. When I go to work, when I associate with people, I feel like I'm undercover, like I can't really speak my mind. We're here for those people. That is half of it.
What, like so you can get together and have lunches or something, or what's the purpose of getting? I mean,
just to socialize, to have a chance not to be isolated.
Well, to me, it seems like the show is promoting your religious beliefs.
We are stating our case. You don't have to agree with us. That's not our business.
Well, I understand that, but it seems to me, and maybe to other viewers, maybe not, that the bottom line is that you just don't like Jesus because he's not on your terms.
It has nothing to do with that, if I may.
Virginia did have a response. Go ahead.
First of all, I think that it's important as an atheist to educate other people what my atheism is about, so I am not misunderstood. And I think that many atheists feel the same way. We are a minority, and we are discriminated against under many false pretenses that people think one way about us. They have a perception of how we are, and because of all that misconception out there, it's important for us to educate other people how we view things, and also so people can see that we're not demonic, monstrous people who worship the devil, as so many would believe. And it's important for other people to know that. And plus, we're not a religion at all. We are the opposite of a religion. We are without gods.
Well, I guess to clarify to the viewers that you're not evil and evil worshippers is, if you are truly atheist, then of course you don't believe in the devil.
That's correct.
Right. So you don't believe in a.
You've already got some benefit from watching the show.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no, I'm not here to just criticize you and put you guys down. So
we are not here. We are not here to attack religion. Though when we are here, it is inevitable. What always happens on this show is people call up and they say, well, you ought to believe because of this, and we respond to that. And other people call up and say, you got to believe because of that, and we respond to that. But now, if that sounds like we're aggressively attacking religion, well,
No, I understand that. But in the same sense, you need to the logic that you use to disbelieve sometimes backfires, because the same logic you use is based on the scientific community that said that the Earth was flat. So
I'm not aware of the scientific community ever saying that the Earth was flat.
There was not any science at the time they thought that the Earth was flat.
Sure, no.
In any case, listen. I can respond to this. Give me a chance here. Okay. Now, it is true that the majority. There have been times when the majority of scientists held a position that turned out to be wrong. Right. Right? No argument there. Let's not quibble over whether it was flat Earth, right? There was a big resistance to the idea of plate tectonics, right? The idea that continents have shifted around over time. A lot of resistance from the scientific community about that turned out to be true. Okay, atheism, most atheists do not hold the position that they know, from looking at the evidence, that there is absolutely not a God. What we do is we do not believe in any gods, even though we are willing to look at evidence, and if the evidence was ever presented that showed that there was a God, we'd believe it.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Well,
right?
I'm glad
we think that the time to believe something is after the evidence appears to show that it's really true, and not before. Can we be wrong? Sure. Could we be wrong? Sure.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well,
I'm we really need to move on, Joe, because we used up a lot of the show today with reading our statements from our gathering today, and we want to try to take a bunch of calls and let more people have a chance to get their voices
All right. Let me just
heard.
say one last thing, and basically, I'm glad you said what you said, but just don't be mad at God for some of the foolish things that men that serve God do.
We cannot be mad at God. We don't believe in Him.
That's going to happen all the time.
Dude, we can't be mad at God. We don't believe in Him.
Okay, all right.
Well, we're not mad at Darth Vader for killing Luke's parents. All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks for taking my call, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks for calling. He was pretty nice.
Yeah.
Let's go to Troy.
Hey,
Troy?
How y'all doing?
We're good. How are you, Troy?
Good. I was going to ask you about atheism and really what it means, but I think I got a good idea from your last response to the last guy. So I guess what I'm asking is, everything that you don't understand about the universe and the way things work, is that just not, because a lot of people would say, if I don't understand something about how it works, then, that's God creating it, that's God doing it.
God of the gaps.
God is what?
There's a philosophical position called God of the gaps.
Is that going to mess you out?
What?
If I turn up my TV, are you going to hear that?
Yeah, we might.
Yeah, actually, it'll probably feedback.
So aren't you hearing us loud enough over the phone?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, well, let's all speak up a little bit and see if we can get through this. Okay. Ask your question, Troy.
Who gets the blame for all the things you don't understand?
Nobody. How can we blame somebody for stuff we don't understand? The only time that it makes any kind of sense to assign blame is when you understand it, because then you know how it happened and where it came from.
Okay, everything that's happening, I guess you probably believe in, like, this connectedness between all things, yes or no?
What?
What connectedness between all things?
Like,
you mean synchronicity?
Seasons.
I think I've heard it called. Is that what you mean?
What?
You mean like synchronicity?
Synchronicity, okay.
That like by mysterious supernatural means unrelated things happen together and it's not a coincidence?
What I'm talking about.
Huh?
Let me give you another example.
Okay.
Just in nature, the seasons, okay, the changing of the seasons and all this inherent intelligence.
You're going to stop there? What are you talking about?
Inherent intelligence.
Of what?
Okay, the seasons, knowing when to change, leaves, knowing when to change.
That's not a question of knowing anything. The Earth orbits around the sun, and it tilts on its axis, and the rate at which the amount of sunlight we get from the sun changes over time, and we have animals and plants that react to that. I don't understand what you're talking about.
I'm talking about all of that knowingness.
What knowingness?
All of that information, okay? The animals knowing how to react, the seasons, the leaves knowing when to change, all this information. Why don't you just call it God?
Go ahead, Russell.
When I do this, would you say that my pen knew to go down toward the table? Was that inherent intelligence that made it look to head in that direction?
Well, I'd call it gravity, like you would.
Okay.
It's gravity. It's also got an inherent intelligence.
How's that?
What I'm saying is there are basic patterns. Things. It's not that things want to do certain things. It's they just do them.
Okay.
Because that's the way that things happen. That's the way things go.
Yeah, we know.
The things that happen in seasons and so forth are more complicated, but they basically reduce to that sort of thing.
So the way, could I, if I'm summarizing you correctly, I could say that if we were to give a label to this idea of things knowing the way things go, gravity.
We don't agree with your word knowing. So if you're going to label that, you're labeling something we don't agree with in the first place.
You don't agree with my word?
We do not agree that there's any intelligence involved in the normal interaction of things in nature. That doesn't follow. I mean,
there's not intelligence in nature knowing when to.
You use the word knowing. Where are the brain cells that nature has that record the information? You know, we human beings can know stuff because we have brains, and information is encoded in our brains, right? We have neurons, and you know, where scientists are starting to puzzle together exactly how that works, but it's clear that it takes this thing called the brain in order for knowing to happen. So to just say that nature knows stuff, you know, then I want to know where the neurons are. How is nature knowing stuff? Where's its brain? Where's its neurons? Where are its sensory organs? What are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about, a little acorn that grows on a tree.
Yeah?
It knows to grow bigger, but it doesn't have a brain.
No, it doesn't know to grow bigger. It grows bigger automatically as its DNA directs the growth of its cells.
Okay, well that's fair enough.
And
so it doesn't know; it just does.
It just does. It's like when you put a needle on a phonograph record.
Yeah.
If you remember that ancient technology. Yeah. When you put a needle on a phonograph record and a certain sequence of sounds comes out, right? Would you say that record knows to make those sounds? No, it doesn't know to make those sounds. The record is spinning, and there's a groove, and there's a needle, and it's bumping up and down against the bumps in the groove, and the sound is coming out. There's no knowing going on. It's just happening.
Okay.
It's natural laws interacting, doing stuff.
I understand. Can I change my train of thought here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We'll give you one more try, but then we want to move on.
I'm sorry?
We'll give you one more try, and then we want to move on.
Okay. Most of the time, you know, if you're like me, you're wanting to get all the information, have like this truth that can, like, you know, bring you insight and joy and happiness in life, right?
I'll settle for truth, and then I'll work out how to get, you know, joy and happiness out of that.
Okay. Well, I want truth first. I agree. Truth is the most important, but really the reason that we want truth is because we think that it's going to bring us a state of joy and happiness, I think. But anyway,
I don't know. There's a big pile of truth sitting in New York City that does not make anybody happy in the United States.
You're getting argumentative with me, sir.
No, that's important that when you make these blanket statements, right, if they're just not valid, that there be some response to that.
Okay, well,
that's what you got to get used to on this show. That's how things happen here.
Well, no,
if you say something that doesn't make sense, we'll tell you.
Okay. Well, my question is, how is atheism going to bring me truth and joy and happiness?
Okay. Anybody else want to take this? I've been talking a lot.
That's a great question.
Okay. Atheism's not about that.
You can say something to that.
The simple answer is atheism's not about that. The only thing that atheism means is the lack of theism, or the lack of belief in any gods. That is all atheism is. Atheism does not make any positive assertions about what's going on out in the world or what it all means.
Okay, can I interrupt you just to say, quickly define God? Is that just a higher power then?
You know, you can go to individual believers and ask them what they mean by God, and we try to do that when they come to us and say we ought to believe in God. We try to get them to tell us what they mean. Okay, and I've often explained on this show that I am an atheist with regard to gods that don't make any kind of sense at all. Like, for example, a loving God who is all-powerful and all-knowing, though there is evil in the world. Okay. There's a philosophical problem there called the problem of evil. That God can't exist. Okay. Then I am an agnostic with regard to gods that are defined in such a vague way, or that you can't put your finger on them or ever be able to figure out whether they exist or not. And also I'm an agnostic with regard to gods who are defined as, well, he's all-powerful, but he doesn't want his existence to be known. Because if there's a God that doesn't want me to know about his existence, I'm not going to know about his existence, right? No way I can prove it either way. But I am a theist with regard to, say, a totem pole on some South Sea island. If those natives point at that hunk of carved wood and say that's their god, I'll say that if that's your god exists. Mm-hmm. And the only disagreement I'll have with them is about what the supernatural powers of that hunk of wood might be. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
well, let's just focus on that then.
To get back to your question, to get back to your question, atheism is not about providing providing positive answers to anything. Atheism is a position on the question of the existence of gods.
A position on the question of what?
Whether gods exist. That is what theism is. Just the position that there aren't any gods.
Okay, so if you believe in the totem pole, then you are not atheist.
Not with regard to that god. Do you believe in a god?
Yeah.
Is that god Odin?
Well, it wasn't some guy with a long gray beard and wearing a white robe.
Please. Simple question.
Huh?
Do you believe that
Odin?
in the god Odin?
No.
Okay, you are an atheist with regard to that god. Because you don't believe in that god, right?
Okay, yeah.
There was a time,
atheists, Christians and atheists are exactly the same, except atheists disbelieve in one more god than they do.
I mean, I would associate myself with that term, okay? So you don't have to convince me of that.
Okay. So thanks very much for your call. We do have to move on.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for calling. Keep watching the show. You asked some interesting questions. Call back anytime.
I was going to say there was a time in the Roman Empire when all Christians were called atheists because they didn't believe in the Roman gods.
In fact, what I have heard is that the term was coined by the Romans and applied to people like Christians because Christians did not believe in the official gods of the land. Who's next? Line 1. Chris. Chris, you there?
Hi.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, at the top of the show, you started talking about senselessness in regards to the accident that happened in New York. And it seemed like you were trying to tie in religion as being sort of senseless when you sort of jumped from what happened in Manhattan and then you ended up talking about religion. Were you planning on doing that, or was that just something that...
Well, it's no surprise to people who watch this show that I have some very strong opinions about religion. In that address, I limited my criticism of religion to people like Jerry Falwell, who are using this terrorist attack as an opportunity to criticize everybody who isn't fundamentalist enough for him.
And I would like to say that I know a lot of religious people who are very sensible in most ways. I mean, and I could never imagine them going out and just deciding to blow up a bunch of people for their religion. So I would not say that religion automatically equals senselessness.
Okay.
Although I don't believe that the foundation of the religion.
Okay, well, let's move past religion, though. And what about just faith in general? What about people who could still be alive and they're under, tons of rubble and they're praying to somebody, or somebody they've never seen?
Yeah.
And none of us have never seen, but it's giving them that strength. Where does that strength come from? You can't see it.
The strength comes from them convincing themselves that that being that they've never seen is real and is going to help them.
Well,
right?
How do you know what they're feeling, though? Their families are praying for them. It seems like that the faith gives so much. It can help people get through this time. And just for you guys to be up here and saying that,
we hear that a lot.
Sympathize with those families.
So I think what the problem with you is that you don't really have faith in anything. You just... It has to be in black and white, or it has to be seen.
No, listen, okay.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, maybe I'm crossing the line because I'm thinking that faith is more than religion. It's more, it's more about what you can see. It's like what you can feel. And sometimes maybe I just feel sorry for you guys because you can't feel it.
Dude,
maybe someday you will feel it, and then you'll realize you've been wrong.
All right, caller, if you don't stop and let us respond, we're going to have to let you go.
Yeah, okay, I'm listening. Go ahead, I'm listening.
All right. 40 atheists gathered in Republic Square Park today to mourn the innocent victims of the terrorist attacks on Tuesday. Okay? We feel just as much as any Christian. We feel just as strongly. Okay? There were tears at our gathering, and none of those 40 people knew any of the victims or even knew any families of any victims. Okay? We were there because we think the whole thing just sucked. Okay? And it made us very sad, very unhappy. We did not pray We expressed our sympathy for the families out there. We leaned on each other for support in this difficult time, and we got through it that way. Now, we certainly sympathize with other people that are devastated emotionally by these events, because we feel it just as much as them. The only difference is we don't turn to invisible gods whose existence we have no evidence of, expecting that that's going to help.
Well, I mean, I don't think you guys keep using the word invisible.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you need him to come up to you, like look you straight in the face and say, "I'm here"? You think that's going to happen?
No, I don't think it's going to happen.
So, but that's where faith comes in. And that's what you guys don't understand.
But why shouldn't it happen?
You have to see it to believe it.
No. See, here we're going to get into the kind of discussion we have all the time on this show. Why shouldn't that happen? Why shouldn't, if there's a God, right? Let's take the generic Christian God, for example. Okay, you still there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take the generic Christian God, for example. There's a hell that you go to if you are not one of his followers.
You're not saved, right? Okay.
Right? And if you don't believe in him and don't follow him, you go to the hell, right?
That's not true. No, that's not true at all. So you could be.
I'm spinning a for instance here, but of course,
and opening your heart to Jesus, and belief is a lot. All I'm saying is that you get a lot from religion or from the faith aspect of it through the whole ordeal.
Why aren't you opening your heart to
Odin?
Just keep using the word invisible.
We use Odin again.
And it's invisible. Air is invisible, but you breathe it, and it keeps you alive. If you can't see the air, but it's obviously you're breathing it. So you want God to come up to you and look you in the face and say, "I'm here."
There are some
you just can't feel it, and that's the problem.
There are conclusive tests that demonstrate the existence of air. Okay, I'm using invisible as a metaphor for lack of evidence. Okay, in the case of God, there's none at all. In the case of air, you can't see it, but there's all kinds of other things you can do to find out that there's air there. It's not the same thing at all.
I don't know. I just think that.
Anyway, why are you mad at us? I'd just like to know, why are you angry with us?
I'm just angry at a lot of things that happened this past week.
So are we.
And I'm a little confused. Personally, when you started talking about senseless at the top of the show, and you tied it in with religion, and you made it seem like, all right, just because there's certain people who speak on behalf of a lot of religious people, they may say things that are. I mean, I didn't know that those guys said that stuff.
Yeah.
Until you told me.
But what
it doesn't really faze me that they said that, because I believe in Jesus. I love him. I open my heart to him. I read the Bible. I gain from reading the Bible. So to me, I gain more from that than with some preacher that he's a middleman. But if you could have a personal relationship with Jesus and read the Bible and gain so much more from it.
Yeah.
Then people will say things, and you talked about the guy who said Jesus said everybody should have a gun.
Okay.
People can say stuff all day long, but if you sit down with the Bible and you read and you just read those words.
Now, Chris, now you're going to have to do it. You have to let us have a chance to talk again, okay? All right. You asked us, whether we recognize that people get comfort from prayer. Yes, we recognize that.
Okay, so why? Why would they? It's
psychological. It's psychological.
It's psychological.
It's psychological. Right?
Is that bad?
And the thing is, and the other thing is, it's not only is it psychological, it's really not necessary. It's not necessary to turn to supernatural powers for comfort.
Yeah,
we don't do it, and we get by.
Tell that to all the people right now who they don't know if their husband or wife or child's alive, and they're looking. They have a little glimmer of hope. They pick up the Bible, they'll read a verse, and they'll get inspired, and it'll help them through one day. I mean, how could you sit there and tell people?
We just agreed that it provides comfort.
It comes from the heart, man.
We just agreed that it provides comfort. I'm not sure why you're mad, but I am sure we're going to have to let you go.
That's your problem. You got to open up your heart.
Chris, we're going to have to let you go. Thanks for your call, man.
It's really sad that people can't get past that anger that they have and that fear that they have to have some person or being over them constantly.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the time that I sat down with my mother, who is a minister, and she revealed to me that in seminary they were taught that a lot of the stories in the Bible are just stories, just made up. And I said, "Do you tell your flock that?" And she said, "No, people aren't prepared to believe it. People are not ready to believe it." And I asked her, "When do you think they're ever going to be ready to hear the truth if you don't tell them?" And she had no answer for that. And I really fear that, this clinging to prayer as the only way to find comfort. I mean, so much so that this guy was angry with us because we didn't do it. Right. It's that same kind of thing. It's like, don't tell people that, maybe it doesn't actually do anything, because they're not ready to hear it. And I give human beings a whole lot more credit than that.
This kind of way of thinking can have a real downside in addition to the hope which we just acknowledged.
Yeah, but let's not talk about that today.
But that's a whole new ballgame.
What I mean is that if you get it into your head that this is the only way to get comfort and that life without it is completely miserable, then if you actually believe that and somebody tries to take that away from you, then you have nothing to fall back on.
Osama bin Laden believes that the only way to get comfort is through belief in Allah, and he's not any more detectable than the Christian God is. Let's take one more call. I think we got just barely enough time. Lou.
Hi.
Hi, Lou. What can we do for you?
Hi. Thank you for your excellent presentations today, all three.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would also say I appreciated, and I didn't get a chance to call in a few weeks ago, when you did the critical thinking thing.
Yeah, we're setting that aside this week. There's just too much other stuff to talk about. But I'll be back to it.
I quite understand. Please. I was so really upset this week to watch the George Bush inclusion of church and state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With all of his
one people
movement.
in five, man. One person in five in the United States excluded from this National Day of Prayer because they are not Christians.
Right.
And I really think that
we really want to take what is our population in the United States right now? How many millions of people is that that we are that our president is alienating by deciding that Christianity is the only way to properly address the nation, the grief of the nation?
Well, he sure alienated me, but that's not the first time. That's at least the second.
I really think that these groups are sort of clamoring to get their agendas pushed through the convenience of this tragedy, because a lot of people are now just too timid to take them on because they think that they'll appear insensitive right now.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. I think your representations of Robertson and Falwell also are right on target, that these men are, the leaders in the religious con game, which is attempting to take over this country, and they're doing a credible job.
They're taking advantage of everybody's fear and shock and anguish right now to try to make everybody more fundamentalist.
Everybody is in such a vulnerable state right now, and it's so easy to take advantage of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
things that don't make sense don't start making sense just because you're distraught and you're desperate to cling to something.
Right.
The worst time to decide what's worthy of belief is when you're distraught.
Exactly.
The best time is when you're calm, when you're secure, when you can stop and really think, and you have a luxury of caring what the truth actually is.
Yes. And I hope you dudes will kind of calm down a little bit after some of these calls you've had today, because I know you
can't blame any of these people for being shocked and anguished, and we don't.
And I'm sure that there's a lot of anger coming out that normally would not come out because of what's happened to our country.
Yeah. Lou, thank you very much for your call. We're going to have to let you go. The show's about to end here. Please call again next week.
Thank you. Have a good night.
If you like. Is that your dad? Okay. We have your daughter here in the studio. In case you didn't know. All right. So that's the end of the show. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will be back again next week. Christians, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was interesting.